My name is Alyssa Grant, and I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who share your last name are the first ones to steal everything you've built. I was 34 the day it happened, old enough to know better, young enough to still be shocked that my own blood could stab me between the ribs with a smile. For most of my adult life, I had carried my family on my back the way a mule carries baggage up a mountain, quietly, dutifully, and without complaint. I paid my mom's medical bills, helped my younger brother stay afloat every time he lost a job, and even covered my dad's rent after he retired early by accidentally forgetting to plan for retirement at all. But I didn't mind. Or maybe I convinced myself I didn't, because helping them felt like the only way to stay connected, to stay needed. And being needed felt like love. At least, until I built something worth real money. 3 years ago, I launched Bright Nest Consulting, a boutique workplace culture and HR reform firm in Denver. What started as a laptop on my dining table grew into a staff of 12, a downtown office, and contracts with companies big enough that my accountant nearly fainted when he saw the first quarter's revenue. Suddenly, I wasn't just the responsible daughter anymore. I was the asset, the plan, the solution to all their financial problems, whether I agreed to it or not. I didn't see the signs at first. My mom asking casually, "Do you have a will yet?" My brother joking about how he would run the company someday, even though he couldn't run a laundry cycle. My dad dropping comments about how family money should stay in the family. But the moment everything snapped into focus was the night I received a text from my aunt. "Family meeting at Mom's house tonight. Important. Be there." No context, no explanation, and definitely no invitation from my mother, who usually called me 5 times a day for things as small as how to connect her phone to Wi-Fi. Something felt off, heavy, like the air right before a storm. I drove over anyway, telling myself I was being dramatic. When I arrived, every single member of my family was already seated in the living room. My parents, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, even 2 cousins who never showed up unless free food was involved. They all looked up at me at once, like they had been rehearsing. A thin folder sat on the coffee table. My name was on the cover. My stomach tightened. My dad cleared his throat and said, "We need to talk about your company, Alyssa." Not, "How are you?" Not, "Glad you're here." Just straight to the point. My company. I felt the air shift, like prey sensing the first movement of predators in the brush. That was the night I learned my family had drafted a plan, without me, to restructure Bright Nest so everyone could benefit fairly. They used phrases like family equity, shared future, collective legacy. In reality, they wanted to take it. Every piece, every contract, every dollar. Everything I had built with 10 years of burnout, therapy, coffee, and grit. And that was the night something inside me, something small, tired, and obedient, finally broke. They thought they knew me. They thought I was soft. They thought I was easy to manipulate because I loved them. What they didn't know was that love doesn't make me weak. It makes me dangerous. When people hear family betrayal, they picture screaming matches, broken plates, or some dramatic TV-style explosion. But in my family, betrayal came dressed in politeness. Soft voices, careful smiles, and sentences that almost sounded reasonable if you didn't listen too closely. My childhood wasn't awful, just lopsided. I was the reliable one, the mature daughter, the fixer. My younger brother, Evan, was the golden boy, the one who just needed a little more time, even at 31. He drifted from job to job, hobby to hobby, girlfriend to girlfriend, and somehow each disaster he created became a learning experience. Meanwhile, I was expected to hold everything together. When my parents divorced during my sophomore year of college, I transferred from UCLA back to Colorado State just so I could be closer in case Mom needed something. Nobody asked my brother to come home. They told him, "Focus on your dreams, sweetheart." I didn't complain. Not back then. Maybe I didn't even know I had the right to. Every woman I know, coworkers, clients, friends, has carried invisible weight for years before realizing just how heavy it was. I was no different. After college, I climbed the HR ladder faster than anyone expected. I was good at reading people, solving conflict, and handling chaos. I guess that's what happens when you grow up managing a household full of emotional landmines. Within 8 years, I went from HR assistant to HR director for a mid-sized software firm. But burnout eventually ate me alive. Working 60-hour weeks mediating grown adults who behaved like toddlers wasn't exactly fulfilling. So I quit. Everyone said I was crazy, but I had already been quietly saving money, building a client list on the side, and sketching a vision for a company that would actually fix workplace culture rather than slap Band-Aids over dysfunction. That became Bright Nest Consulting. The first year was brutal. Late nights, savings drained, contracts falling through, constant fear of failure. I lived on cold brew and drive-through salads. I dated nobody. My social life was my laptop. But slowly, the tide turned. A startup hired me to rebuild their burned-out team. Then a restaurant chain brought me in to stop their turnover crisis. Word spread. Referrals snowballed. Within 2 years, I had 12 employees, a waiting list of clients, and a revenue stream that made even my accountant raise an eyebrow. My family watched all of this from the sidelines, and their reactions were interesting. My mom: "I still don't understand what you do, but I'm proud of you, honey." My dad: "You should hire Evan. He'd be great with people." My brother: "Must be nice being rich." My aunt: "Maybe you could help the family business, now that you're successful." The comments were subtle, but the message was clear. My success was no longer mine. It was theirs to benefit from. It started small, Mom asking for help with a car payment, Evan needing just a little to cover rent after quitting another job, Dad insisting I invest in his friend's once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I helped because I loved them, because saying no felt selfish, because that's what daughters are raised to do, carry without complaining. But love without boundaries turns into entitlement, and entitlement grows into expectation, and expectation becomes demand. The shifting tone was gradual, almost invisible at first. Mom started assuming I'd pay for things before asking. Evan would joke, "You're the family bank now." My dad kept telling relatives I was set for life, as if they were entitled to a slice of my stability. I ignored all the warning signs, until the night of the family meeting. That night, their language changed, from suggestions to plans, from hints to claims, from "maybe you could help" to "we've decided how your company should be distributed among the family." As if I were gone, as if Bright Nest were some inheritance they were dividing early, as if the past decade of sweat and sacrifice were just communal property. That was when the truth hit me with full force. They didn't see Bright Nest as my company. They saw it as something they were owed, And the worst part? I realized I had trained them to think that way by never setting boundaries. But that was about to change, whether they liked it or not. When I finally sat down in my mother's living room that night, every face in the room looked strangely calm. Too calm. Like they had already agreed on something, without me, and were just waiting for the final piece of the puzzle to walk in. That piece was me. My mother offered a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sweetheart, we're glad you're here. This is an important discussion." My pulse fluttered. "About what?" My aunt, Linda, cleared her throat dramatically as if she'd been rehearsing lines for a community theater audition. "It's about Bright Nest, dear. The family has been talking, and we feel it's time we all play a role in its future." My eyebrows shot up. The family? We all? Since when has anyone in this room been involved in my company? Dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was about to deliver a lecture. "Alyssa, you're doing well, really well, and we're proud. But success brings responsibility. Family comes first. You know that." I let out a slow breath. I've always put family first. I always have. "Exactly," Dad said. "And now it's time for the family to benefit from your hard work." The audacity of that sentence hit me so hard it almost made me laugh. My brother Evan jumped in next. "Look, we're not trying to take anything away from you. We just think things should be more balanced. You're stressing yourself out running everything alone. It's not healthy." I looked at him, unemployed for the third time in 18 months, living rent-free with my parents, and wondered how he managed to say that without choking. My mother motioned toward the folder on the table. "Open it, sweetheart." I hesitated before pulling the folder closer. Inside were printed pages, tables, charts, legal phrasing someone had copied from a Google search, and a cover page titled, "Bright Nest Family Share Reallocation Plan, Draft 2. Draft 2. Meaning at least one earlier version had existed, meaning they'd been planning this for a while. My stomach dropped. The plan was a list of roles they had assigned themselves, as if they were casting characters in a twisted family play. CEO, Evan Grant. Chief Operating Officer, Mark Grant, Dad. Chief People Officer, Linda Harper, Aunt. Director of Community Partnerships, Cheryl Grant, Mom. Founder, Alyssa Grant, non-voting position. Non-voting. In my own company. I blinked at the page, then back at them. "You want my company," I whispered. "Not to help. Not to support. You want to take it." "You're being dramatic," Linda said, waving a hand. "This is about unity." "It's about stability," Mom added. "You've said yourself you're tired. This way, you don't have to carry everything alone." Dad leaned forward again. "Plus, Bright Nest belongs to the Grant family. It's our combined legacy." "No," I said slowly. "It's mine. I built it. Alone." Dad's jaw tightened. "That's an ungrateful way to look at it." Ungrateful. A familiar word. The one they used when I dared set even the smallest boundary. Evan exhaled dramatically. "There's no need to get upset. We already signed our parts." "What?" He pointed to the back of the packet. There were signature lines. Mom, Dad, Evan, Aunt Linda, each neatly signed in blue ink. They had signed documents for a company they didn't own, in roles I hadn't approved, for authority they had invented. As if that wasn't enough, Aunt Linda leaned forward and added softly, "We've already spoken to a lawyer, dear, about formalizing the restructure." My chest tightened. "You talked to a lawyer about my company without telling me?" Dad shrugged. "It's family business. You don't need to micromanage everything." I stared at him, stunned by the mix of entitlement and delusion. But Evan wasn't done. He smirked. "I told some friends I'd be stepping into a leadership role soon. They're excited for me. And Mom already told the church group you're transitioning out so you can focus on your personal life. You don't even date, Alyssa." The humiliation hit like a slap. They were announcing a takeover publicly. Before telling me. Before giving me a choice. They were trying to back me into a corner. My voice dropped to a whisper. "You already told people I'm stepping down?" Mom nodded gently. "It'll be better for you. And for us. We're a team, Alyssa. Family means sharing." I felt something crack, quietly, then sharply, like an old branch snapping under too much weight. That was the moment I knew. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as an ATM with a pulse, a staircase to climb, a door to unlock opportunity they hadn't earned. And the worst thought hit me like ice. If they were willing to plan this much without me, what else were they willing to do? I sat there frozen, the packet of papers heavy in my lap. Each page felt like a betrayal printed in ink. Neat margins, bullet points, signatures that didn't belong anywhere near my company. I didn't speak for a moment, because if I did, I wasn't sure what would come out. Words? Tears? Or something sharp enough to slice the fragile peace in the room. My dad mistook my silence for agreement. He smiled, a slow, satisfied smile that made my skin crawl. "Good," he said. "I was worried you'd make this difficult." Make this difficult. As if they hadn't just attempted a corporate coup in my mother's living room. Evan tapped his foot impatiently. "So we figured the transition can start next week. I'll come by the office Monday to observe operations and meet your staff. You know, show them the new leadership." My eyes snapped up. "You're not stepping into my office. Not for a second." Evan laughed, a full, dismissive laugh. "Come on, Liz. We already talked about this. Don't drag it out." "I didn't talk about anything," I shot back. "You all talked at me, without me, behind my back." Mom sighed, rubbing her temples dramatically as if I were the one exhausting her. "Sweetheart, you always work yourself into a panic. This is a good thing, a blessing. Think about all the stress you'll finally get rid of." My heart thudded in my chest. She genuinely believed this was a favor. They all did. Aunt Linda leaned forward, voice syrupy sweet. "And you'll still have a place in the company, dear. Just not a decision-making one. You're the visionary. You don't need the pressure of leadership." Non-voting. Decorative. A mascot in my own life. My father cleared his throat again. "To make things official, we need access to the business accounts. Bank, payroll, all of it. You can bring the documents Sunday. We'll sign everything together." I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't just taking titles. They wanted control of my money, my employees' paychecks, my contracts, my entire livelihood. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "You want access to my accounts?" Dad nodded, unbothered. "It's necessary. How else can the transition happen smoothly?" My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't incompetence. It wasn't misunderstanding. This was intentional. They were trying to cut me out financially until I had nothing left but whatever scraps of identity they allowed me to keep. For the first time that night, I looked around the room, not as a daughter, or a sibling, or a niece, but as a woman staring at a group of people who believed they had a right to consume her life because she'd been too loyal for too long. I finally asked, "Did any of you think to ask me what I wanted?" Silence. A long, heavy silence. Then Evan shrugged. "You owe us, Alyssa, after everything the family's done for you." Oh, oh, oh. That word punched the air out of my lungs. "What exactly," I whispered, "do you think you've done for me?" Dad's expression hardened. "We raised you. We supported you. We expect you to do the same. It's time you give back." Give back. As if the last decade of bills, loans, rescues, favors, emotional labor, and sacrifice meant nothing. My mother spoke next, gently but firmly. "And if you don't agree to this, sweetheart, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal options." My head jerked up. "Legal options?" She nodded. "We talked to a lawyer. He said we have a case for family equity, that we contributed to your success." Contributed? To my company? A company none of them had ever set foot in? I felt something deep inside me shift, a quiet, seismic movement, like a plate locking into place after years of drifting. For the first time in my life, fear didn't come. Clarity did. Clarity cold enough to freeze oceans. "I'm not giving you my company," I said. My father's face darkened. "You don't get to make that call." "I built this," I replied, "and you will not take it from me." Evan rolled his eyes. "You're being emotional." "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm being done." That's when my mother, my soft-voiced, gentle, sweet-natured mother, finally snapped. She stood up, pointing a finger at me. "If you walk out of this house without signing those papers, don't you dare come back asking for help when your little business collapses." I stood too, not shaking, not crying, just awake. "I've never asked you for help," I said, "and after tonight, I never will." I picked up the packet, tore it cleanly in half, and dropped the pieces onto the carpet. Their faces, shock, anger, disbelief, blurred together as I walked toward the door. And that was the exact moment I reached the point of no return. The moment I realized I didn't recognize these people anymore, and I didn't want to. I drove home that night in complete silence. No music, no podcasts, no thoughts I could hold on to for more than a second. Just the steady rhythm of the road and the sharp, metallic taste of anger settling into something colder, steadier. Resolve. I had spent my entire adult life being the dependable one, the daughter who showed up, the sister who bailed people out, the one who swallowed hurt feelings because family is family. But walking out of that house, I understood something I had never allowed myself to admit. Family can become the cage you don't realize you're locked inside, until the moment you finally try to leave. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the decision had already formed, fully, undeniably, and without hesitation. If my family wanted a war for my company, then I would give them one. And I would win. Not out of revenge, not out of spite, but because Brightnest was mine. Because my employees relied on me. Because I had bled for this company in ways my family would never understand. and because letting them take it meant surrendering the last piece of myself I actually owned. I walked into my house, dropped my keys, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. My hands shook for the first few minutes, not in fear, but in fury. Then I started typing. Step 1. Secure everything. Emails, contracts, financial accounts, receipts, legal documents. I printed and downloaded every piece of proof showing I was the sole founder, owner, and operator of Brightnest. Step 2. Call the lawyer who drafted my original business documents. Her name was Danielle Pierce, an older attorney with the personality of a sharpened blade. If I was going into battle, she was the person I wanted beside me. It was nearly 10 p.m., but Danielle answered on the second ring. Alyssa? Everything okay? No, I said honestly, and I need your help. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She just said, tell me everything. So I did. Every detail, every signature they forged, every lie they told, every attempt to corner me into submission. When I finished, there was a long pause on the line. Then Danielle's voice came through, steady and razor sharp. They don't have a legal leg to stand on, and if they think they do, they're about to learn the hard way. I felt a tear slip down my cheek, not from sadness, but from relief. You're sure? I whispered. Alyssa, she said, you built Brightnest with your own money, your own labor, your own contracts. Unless you willingly handed them control, and you didn't, they have no claim. I exhaled the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Danielle continued, but you need to be smart now. Your family crossed a line. Once people show you what greed can make them do, you believe them the first time. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a takeover attempt. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Tomorrow, she said, we'll go through every document with a fine-tooth comb. And Alyssa? Yes? Do not meet with them again. Not alone. Not without me. A shiver ran down my spine. Not fear, validation. After hanging up, I didn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, but because my mind was finally awake, sharp, alert, alive in a way it hadn't been in years. Around midnight, I drove to the Brightnest office. The building was quiet, the lobby lights dim, the cleaning crew already gone. I walked through each department in the dark, the HR wing, the consulting rooms, the training center, my small but well-loved office. This place wasn't just a business. It was my sanctuary, my escape, my proof that I could build a life on my own terms, and I would defend it. I logged into the company server and updated everything. New passwords, new multi-factor authentication, new administrative permissions with only me at the top, a system-wide lockout for any suspicious activity. Then I sent a midnight email to my entire staff. Please note that only I have authority to make leadership decisions at Brightnest. If anyone claiming to be a family member contacts you, forward directly to me and do not engage. I didn't provide details, not yet, but I drew the line, and I cemented it in writing. Around 2 a.m., I drove back home, exhausted but strangely energized. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. I felt powerful. Not because I controlled a business, not because I had money or influence, but because I had finally chosen myself. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. From Mom, "Sweetheart, please don't overreact." From Dad, "We need those documents Sunday. Bring them." From Evan, Don't make this dramatic. It's happening either way. From Aunt Linda. If you walk away from this family, don't expect us to come running later. Every message confirmed the same truth. They had expected me to fold. They had counted on it. But I wasn't folding anymore. That afternoon, Danielle texted me. Bring everything. We fight this properly. I gathered my files, locked the door behind me, and stepped outside. No more guilt. No more self-sacrifice. No more playing the role of the dutiful daughter. I wasn't choosing them anymore. I was choosing me. Danielle's office sat on the 12th floor of a downtown building. Sleek glass walls, modern furniture, the kind of place that instantly quieted your nerves because you knew you were in the presence of someone who won battles for a living. She greeted me with a firm nod and a mug of strong coffee. "Let's get to work," she said, motioning me toward the conference table already covered in sticky notes, printed documents, and an iPad glowing with legal statutes. I sank into the chair and exhaled. Danielle clicked a pen. "First, we secure your legal foundation. Then, we dismantle every move they've made. And finally," she gave me a sharp look, "we make sure they never try this again." A ripple of something, relief, adrenaline, ran through me. "Where do we start?" I asked. She flipped open a binder. Step 1. Prove ownership beyond dispute. She got right to work, going through everything. The original LLC formation documents, operating agreements, EIN filings, contract signatures, bank account registrations, the capital funding trail, all receipts from the years I worked alone building Bright Nest. Every page she reviewed, she checked off with a small, satisfied nod. "Alyssa," she said finally, "your company is bulletproof. Legally, emotionally, financially, you built it cleanly." Hearing that felt like someone lifting a 50-pound weight off my chest. "Then how could they think they have a case?" I asked. Danielle raised an eyebrow. "Because they don't understand how the law works. They understand how you work." My breath stilled. Fear, guilt, obligation. She saw it in my face. "They assumed you'd fold," she said. "They've been conditioning you for years. Today is the first time you pushed back, and they panicked. That's why they're doubling down." I swallowed. "Doubling down?" "Yes," Danielle said, sliding her phone toward me. "Look." My stomach dropped. She had received an email from a lawyer representing my family, sent early that morning. Subject: Request for voluntary transition of ownership. CC, my parents, Evan, Aunt Linda. The email demanded access to Bright Nest's books, a meeting to finalize family restructuring, a voluntary transfer of operational control, a timeline for me to step down. Danielle snorted. "This is the legal equivalent of a toddler drawing a contract with crayons, but it shows intent, and that is exactly what we need." "Intent for what?" I asked. Her eyes sharpened. "Intent to commit unlawful coercion and fraudulent misrepresentation, two things courts do not look kindly on." She set the email aside and pulled up another document. "Step 2, she continued. "We document everything. Every conversation, every threat, every message. We're building a timeline, a story the court can follow." She handed me a packet with headings. Incident 1, Unauthorized Legal Consultation. Incident 2, Family Meeting/Forced Restructure. Incident 3, Signatures Without Consent. Incident 4, Demands for Financial Access. Incident 5, Threat of Legal Pressure. Incident 6, Public Misrepresentation of Ownership. Seeing it laid out like that, cold, factual, undeniable, hit harder than any emotional argument ever could. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated attempt to take something they didn't earn. Danielle leaned back. Now the big one. Step 3. We protect you from retaliation. Retaliation? I asked. She folded her hands. Alyssa, people who feel entitled to your success will do reckless things when they realize they've lost control. Almost as if the universe wanted to prove her point, my phone buzzed on the table. Dad, if you don't cooperate, we'll bring in financial investigators. You won't like what they find. Danielle glanced at it. That's a threat. Save it. Buzz. Another message. Mom, sweetheart, please don't make this ugly. Just hand over what we need. You know family comes first. Buzz. Evan, if you block me from the company, I'll tell people you're unstable. Don't push me. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. Danielle took the phone gently. Every message they send becomes evidence, she said. Let them talk. She pulled out a fresh legal pad. Now we draft your boundaries. My boundaries? I echoed. Yes, she said firmly. You're going to send one written notice, calm, professional, final. No emotion, no apology, no cracks they can squeeze through. Together we crafted it. Subject: regarding Brightnest ownership and communication. To avoid any confusion, I am the sole founder, owner, and decision-maker of Brightnest Consulting. Any attempt to claim authority, distribute roles, or access business accounts without my consent is unauthorized and will be treated as such. I will not attend any further family meetings involving Brightnest. All future communication regarding this matter must go through my attorney, Danielle Pierce. This notice is considered formal and final. Alyssa Grant. When I read it aloud, something inside me straightened, like my spine finally learned how to stand without bending. Danielle said, "Once you send that, there's no going back." I don't want to go back, I said quietly. Before sending it, I asked, "What's step 4? Her answer was simple and terrifying. Step 4, she said, is preparing for their reaction, because they will escalate. I believed her. I hit send, and in that moment, I officially declared war. On people who shared my DNA, on people I once trusted, on people who believed they were entitled to the life I built. I wasn't their pawn anymore. I was their opponent. I expected backlash after sending the formal notice, but I wasn't prepared for how fast, how desperate, and how ugly my family would become once they realized I wasn't bluffing. It began the very next morning at 7:12 a.m., when I received an email from a law firm I'd never heard of. Subject: Notice of intention to pursue family equity claim. The letter was filled with dramatic phrases like unjust enrichment, familial investment, and implied shared ownership. In other words, they were accusing me of building my company using family resources, which supposedly gave them rights to Brightnest. Danielle skimmed the email once, smirked, and said, "This is garbage, the legal version of a tantrum." But tantrums, she warned, can still cause damage if left unchecked. By noon, a second wave hit. My mother posted on Facebook, "Prayers appreciated. We're going through something heartbreaking. Sometimes children forget who raised them." I had clients who followed her, colleagues, old friends. I felt my stomach twist. By evening, Evan joined in with a vague tweet. Wild how some people get success and suddenly think family is optional. He added a crying emoji, because of course he did. Dad wasn't subtle either. He called several of my cousins, telling them I was being manipulated by outsiders and trying to cut the family out of their rightful share. The narrative spread fast, like gasoline across dry grass. Danielle wasn't surprised. "This is a pressure campaign," she said. "They want to embarrass you into caving." But I didn't cave. Instead, I documented every post, every call, every message. Because once they turned public, they crossed a line that courts take seriously: defamation tied to financial coercion. 2 days later came the most shocking blow. I arrived at the Bright Nest office to find 2 employees outside looking shaken. "What's going on?" I asked. They exchanged glances. "Your dad," one said softly. "He came by." My heart stopped. "He said he was the new COO," the other added, "and he needed to inspect the premises before Monday." I felt heat rush to my face. Anger, disbelief, humiliation. They went on. "He tried to walk into the HR department. Security stopped him. He said you gave permission. We didn't know what to believe." My hands trembled as I thanked them. He had shown up at my company, pretending to be an executive. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was illegal. Danielle arrived within 20 minutes. After speaking with my staff, she turned to me with a deadly calm expression. "This," she said, "is attempted corporate trespassing tied to fraudulent representation. We're not playing defense anymore." For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt protected. That afternoon, Danielle drafted a cease and desist order addressed to my entire family. Not emotional, not dramatic. Cold, precise, legally lethal. It barred them from contacting my staff, entering Bright Nest property, claiming titles or roles, seeking access to accounts, spreading false claims about ownership, approaching me directly. Violating any part would trigger criminal charges. We sent it by certified mail. The fallout was immediate. My mother called me 14 times in a row. I didn't answer. Dad sent a string of texts, all caps, furious. Evan left a voicemail calling me a narcissist who abandoned the people who loved me. But then came the desperate stage. My mother sent one last message that nearly broke me. "If you do this, if you choose your company over us, then you are no longer part of this family." I sat in my office, the words burning through my screen. Danielle saw my face and said gently, "Alyssa, this is manipulation. Love doesn't come with ultimatums." I nodded, wiping a tear, but I didn't reply to my mother. By the end of the week, their lawyer made the biggest mistake he could have made. He filed the lawsuit. Danielle laid the papers on the table between us. Grant family versus Alyssa Grant claim. Shared family ownership of Bright Nest Consulting. My father, my mother, my brother, and my aunt were listed as plaintiffs. Seeing their names in legal print did something to me, something irreversible. I wasn't mourning anymore. I wasn't angry. I was done. Court day arrived 2 months later. My family walked in together, dressed as if attending church, somber, united, falsely dignified. My mother avoided my eyes. Evan glared at me as though I had betrayed him, rather than the other way around. Their attorney spoke first, weaving a dramatic tale about how I had grown up benefiting from family support and therefore had a moral and legal obligation to share my company. Danielle nearly laughed. When it was our turn, she rose with the calm of someone who knew she was about to bury the opposing side. She presented the original LLC documents naming me the sole owner, Financial statements proving all startup costs came from my savings. Emails showing no family member ever contributed to the business. Screenshots of their threats. Evidence of public defamation. Witness statements from my staff about Dad's trespassing. And her trump card, the recording from the family meeting. I had recorded the conversation on my phone. The courtroom went silent as the audio played. My dad. Brightnest belongs to the family. You don't get to make that call. Evan. It's happening either way. My aunt. We talked to a lawyer. You'll have to accept it. My mom. If you don't sign, don't come back. By the time it ended, the judge looked appalled. The ruling was swift. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could never file again. And then came the kicker. My family was ordered to pay my legal fees, every single dollar. When the judge asked if they had anything to say, my mother finally looked at me. But instead of remorse, her expression held only accusation. You did this to us, she whispered. And that was the moment I finally understood. They hadn't lost a daughter. They had lost control, and they blamed me for it. The night after the court ruling, I sat alone in my apartment with a cup of chamomile tea, the same tea my mother used to brew when I was little. Back then, it meant comfort. Tonight, it tasted like closure. People talk about healing as if it's a soft process, gentle, warm, quiet. Mine wasn't. Mine was sharp and unsteady, a series of realizations that hit like cold waves. Winning in court didn't magically make things better. It just made things clear. For weeks after the lawsuit, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails. My family didn't even try to apologize. Instead, they disappeared, retreating into their own echo chamber of blame and bruised pride. But here's what surprised me. For the first time in my adult life, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. At Bright Nest, things changed too, in the best way. My employees already knew something was happening behind the scenes, but once the dust settled, they began stopping by my office just to say, I'm proud of you. You didn't let them take what you built. You're stronger than you think. And maybe for the first time, I actually believed them. We grew fast. New clients, new partnerships, new opportunities. Our name made the Denver Business Journal, then a national HR magazine, and finally, a Women in Leadership podcast that asked me to speak about boundary setting. I almost said no. Talking publicly about family felt like peeling a wound open again. But then I remembered something Danielle told me the day after the ruling. Women are taught to hide their strength. Stop hiding. So I went on that podcast. I told my story, not the legal details, but the emotional truth. How women are conditioned to apologize for success. How family first can become you last. How generational expectations fall hardest on daughters. How guilt becomes a leash if you never learn to say no. The episode went viral within a week. My inbox flooded with messages from women across the country. My sister tried to steal my business too. My parents think my paycheck belongs to them. My family called me selfish for leaving a job that drained me. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel. Their stories felt like mirrors held up to my own life. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. I just didn't know how many women were quietly drowning under the same weight. 3 months after the court case, something unexpected happened. I ran into my mother at a grocery store. She froze when she saw me, gripping her shopping cart like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Alyssa," she whispered, "you look tired." "I'm not," I replied softly. "I'm actually doing really well." Her eyes glistened. Not quite tears, not quite remorse, just confusion. Like she didn't know who I was anymore now that I wasn't bending. "I never wanted it to get this ugly," she said. "I know," I replied, "but I didn't say what I was thinking. You didn't want it ugly as long as you got what you wanted." She opened her mouth again as if to continue, but I gently shook my head. "I'm not here to fight," I said, "but I'm also not going back to the old dynamic. If we want any relationship at all, it has to be one where my boundaries matter." She swallowed hard, a tiny motion, but for her, it was seismic. "We'll see," she whispered, then slowly walked away. And for the first time, watching her leave didn't hurt. It simply felt honest. Healing isn't about reconciliation. Healing is about alignment with your values, your worth, your peace. Some people will meet you there, some won't, and both outcomes are okay. As for Bright Nest, a year after the lawsuit, my company was listed as one of Colorado's top 20 women-led businesses. I hired more staff, expanded into 2 additional states, launched leadership programs for women who felt overlooked at work or undervalued at home. Every time I stood in front of a room full of women and told them they deserved better, I felt something inside me settle into place. A purpose, a North Star, a life finally fully my own. If there's one message I want anyone hearing my story to take away, it's this. You are allowed to protect what you build. You are allowed to say no, even to family. You are allowed to choose yourself. Loyalty should never cost you your identity. Love should never require self-erasure. And success does not require you to dim your light so others feel more comfortable. My story didn't end with losing a family. It began with reclaiming myself. And if you're standing at the edge of that same decision, wondering if you're selfish for wanting boundaries, or cruel for saying no, or ungrateful for choosing your own peace, hear me clearly. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. And sometimes, it's the beginning of your real life.